my name is Rikhi. Welcome to my SAESAC International Student Speaker Series talk. Before we begin, I would like to provide a trigger warning for anyone regarding sexual assault and harassment. This talk and my story contains brief mentions of sexual harassment, and given that this month of April is the National Sexual Assault Awareness Month, I would be remiss if not to mention and raise awareness about the resources that are available on campus, the ones that I used, as well as providing a trigger warning to anyone who may be affected in the room and listening on later. If you would continue to listen to my presentation from 15 minutes in, you would miss any and all mentions of said assault and harassment. Thank you so much for attending my presentation today, and with that, I would love to begin. So I'm a Singaporean aerospace engineering graduate student at Georgia Tech, and this is where I finished my bachelor's in aerospace engineering in May 2020, and will graduate with my master's in aerospace engineering this May in 2022. I'm an incoming urban air mobility system safety engineer, and I was the recipient of Aviation Week Network's 2020s Award, where I was also the selected speaker, and I was a Brick Owens Fellow in the class of 2019. I founded Singapore's first Women Leaders in Aerospace Conference, and I also founded this series of talks that you are currently listening to, or Georgia Tech Aerospace's International Student Speaker Series. I deeply care about the well-being of minorities in STEM and post about wellness in the context of STEM at Rikhi Roy on Instagram and at Rikhi_Roy on TikTok. With this interest, I have also led journaling workshops across Scotland, Lebanon, Morocco, Mexico, and the United States at Georgia Tech, Yale, Stanford, and Columbia. My aerospace journey and story began on March 8, 2014, when the Malaysian Airlines disappearance occurred. As you can see, this is a snapshot of my Singaporean passport overlaid with all the emotions that act as stamps across the pages that I was experiencing. So this was fear, confusion, and this translated into wonder and a determination to change something about what happened. Initially, I was Googling things such as what is a black box and reading books on the topic. I then did a non-destructive testing internship starting from June 6th to July 6th, 2015, knowing that someone I knew could have been on that plane, and I felt compelled to play a role in aviation safety. Following that year, in August 22, 2016, I started my journey at Georgia Tech as an aerospace engineering bachelor student after discovering my curiosity and passion in aerospace. I chose Georgia Tech not only for its incredible breadth of research experiences, but for the extracurricular opportunities that it would afford me, particularly the Nationally Indian Classical competitive dance team that existed on campus that would continuously win first or second place. I also chose Georgia Tech because of its Design Build Fly Club that also won first and second place in both national and global competitions. I was incredibly excited to be on campus and immerse myself in these activities. However, as an international student, I needed to take 5 to 6 classes every semester to graduate. On top of this, because of being an international student and having personal financial constraints, I took on an on-campus student assistantship. And this was layered with the fact that I was then immersed in a job hunt as an international student, which we know to be notoriously difficult. And I also wanted to partake in the incredible research opportunities on campus. And so this was the reality of balancing it all. It was not very successful, and I faced a lot of challenges.
And so I want to take a moment to highlight some resources on campus that have helped me pivot out of these like really challenging moments. So first, the success.gatech.edu gives you access to academic coaching and tutoring that was really useful for me in getting my GPA up and feeling technically confident. As international students, we have access to mental health resources such as therapy, even beyond care. And so you can go on Psychology Today and they accept the insurance that we have to pay. And then finally, Voice is a phenomenal resource, and Jennifer and Amanda at Voice have been really helpful in making sure that I feel safe on campus, that I have the language to describe what's happening to my advisor or my research engineers and stuff like that. All right. So all of those resources combined, and particularly academic coaching, helped me in few moments of lift in my journey. So I received the Brooke Owens Fellowship, and through that, I was mentored by Srisha Bandla, who's the second Indian-born woman who flew in space recently. And having access to these resources made me want to share it with the folks back home in Singapore. So I hosted the She Leads conference, and the deputy administrator of NASA was my keynote speaker. And because of that experience, I got to speak at the International Astronautical Congress, which is the largest global space conference sponsored by NASA JPL. And so that's the photo at the bottom there. But again, at 2020, we know what happened with COVID. And so all of the places that I had worked really hard to recruit for slipped through my fingers like quicksand. And so I graduated in May 2020 unemployed with a 2.96 GPA, which made me feel like I was unemployable and not as competitive to the companies that would have had me. And I had 3 months to figure it all out or leave the United States. My family couldn't attend my graduation, and I hadn't seen them for months. And I was navigating my broken friendships and building new support systems. So since sophomore year, I'd actually self-rejected myself from graduate school due to my grades. And so I hadn't even considered applying. I wasn't going to apply. I was like, who's going to take me with my GPA and with my unaligned research experiences? And so I came across this quote then, which is, how can you use your crisis as a catalyst for fundamental change, by Arianna Huffington. And she founded the Huffington Post and Thrive Global, which now focuses on wellness in the corporate workplace. And so I think this really stuck with me. And that's really what prompted my wellness arc. And I want to preface that by sharing that I had basic necessities such as shelter, food, water, and my family support from afar. And in those 3 months, I essentially chose to feel hope, possibility, and limitlessness when I didn't have much to work with. So I was really going with rooting myself in these beliefs to see if that would create any shifts in my external world. So I picked up daily journaling, gratitude, movement, meditation, and started coaching. And so things then really began to shift. I was admitted to graduate school 2 days after applying in a very unconventional way. I was fully funded, which I was so grateful for. And then other cool things started to happen. I was featured on a magazine I read as a kid. My grades shifted because of this wellness arc. I got featured on Georgia Tech's page despite having graduated as a 2.96 student. I received a full-time offer in the role that I wanted, the role that I've been hoping to get since I was 14. Not only did I get the award, I was also the speaker. Some of the inspiring leaders I used to blog about, I got to meet them in person. And I was able to build new, respectful, trustworthy, and uplifting relationships. And so I realized I was onto something with the wellness content, and it wasn't enough for me to do it myself without sharing it with others. So I decided to do lives on social media where I could talk to the people who were mentoring me, the women who were ahead of me, who were like doing something right as well. And so I got to talk to them about how taking care of yourself is foundational, how you can prime your mind to feel worthy of the 4.0, something that I think felt so elusive to me as an undergrad. I just thought that like I could never do that, even though all of us at Georgia Tech have been phenomenal students all throughout high school. To start believing that you deserve an opportunity in the industry of your dreams despite all odds, which is so relevant, particularly for international students, that your boundaries matter and that you can attract inspiring and stable friendships. Because when I started to believe those things, I started to be in communities that were more supportive and healthy for my mental health, and it led to cool things happening in my life. And so that's on social media, and so is my conversations with leaders who are even more senior. So folks like the executive director of a nonprofit who's sending high school girls to space, the climate intelligence lead at Lockheed Martin, and so on and so forth. And so you can find all of these conversations of people that have personally helped me in my journey to sort of unlock these cool experiences. None of this is, being gatekeeped. You can listen to it on my profile and get help from these people who've personally helped me. And so with that, I'll be transitioning to what you're mostly here for. And I wanted to present a consolidated strategy for what I wish I could have done in my international student journey to getting my full-time position. And I did all of this just like not in the right order. And I started doing a lot of this in my master's program when I felt like I was being respected more in the situations that I was in, and that I could really believe that I had a certain amount of technical confidence. All right, so the quick snapshot is that first, I would recommend getting introspective. I had such a long spiel on wellness because I think that that has weaved through all the rest of the steps, and I deeply believe that that will help you in your journey. Then note all the aerospace disciplines. Research in a discipline of interest, find your niche in that discipline, build some sort of portfolio website or presence online, identify the places that you can work, and I can help you with that. Then network to fact check, because these companies and places of work can feel like moving targets where they change their regulations often. The network for mentors. One bucket should be PhD and master's mentors. So if you're at a master's level, find a PhD student. If you're a PhD student, find someone more senior than you, and definitely have industry mentors. Then ask them for help, and that should prime you for your internship and full-time positions. Okay, so jumping into the basics. When you're getting introspective, I want you to ask yourself things like, who am I? What am I good at? What do I enjoy? Why did I choose this major? And what excites me about this industry? And I want to give you the opportunity to ask yourself that question, even if you're all the way in a PhD, because your interests are ever evolving and you can always do something more multidisciplinary. Give yourself an opportunity to ask yourself these sorts of questions as often as you can to get to know yourself. Once you do that, you should note all the aerospace disciplines and subdisciplines with an emphasis on the subdisciplines. So are there nuances and things within a discipline that you haven't explored yet that people in industry seem to know about, but you could get some help digging into further? Then you want to start research in your discipline of interest. So you're combining your answers from question number 1 with number 2 and taking a deeper dive into the discipline with research so that you can start getting experience. A lot of international students apply to internships in their first year being hopeful, but then get rejected and feel really crushed because maybe their application wasn't as competitive as it could have been had they had more research experience. Next, you're finding your niche. So when you're in a PhD program, a lot of international students end up getting the internships that they want because they have a focus and they have the experience that makes them arguably a more competitive candidate than a bachelor's student. So if you're a bachelor's student, if you can identify a niche within your discipline of interest and then start getting experience in that, so like you have 3 experiences on your resume that build on this area, it makes you somewhat of an equally competitive candidate. Obviously, a PhD student has more experience, but they are also going for a very, very niche role. So I would argue that I know bachelor students who've done this and been successful, whereas I only started doing this in my master's degree, which is when I was able to be successful with this. And so what do I mean by niche? So something like safety that I'm in wasn't explicitly taught to me in my undergraduate degree, but it falls under systems engineering, and I didn't know this when I was taught it. So I only learned this in my master's program, and then within safety, I've had so many different types of research experiences. So I was being paid by the FAA to do machine learning for safety, but there could be other flavors where my 8900 thesis work was on human factors in safety, and other folks have experience with accident investigation, whereas I'll be doing system safety in my full-time role. And so someone applying to an accident investigation job would still have different experiences compared to someone in system safety because they're addressing the problem from like different ends of the spectrum. So find your niche, like get really like gritty with who you are, what you care about, and your why. And so once you have all of this, once you understand where you are on the spectrum, for example, for something like safety, which I'm doing, you want to build some sort of online presence to share your story, your passions, your excitement about the discipline and niche with the information that you have, with the research and the clubs on campus that you're part of. So here you want to answer the questions, how do I want to show up? What do I want them to know about me? So if someone clicked on your profile on your LinkedIn and saw your portfolio, would they get a sense that you care deeply about accident investigation over system safety? Because I found that for international students, those differences add up and they matter. And unfortunately, that's just not the same case for our American peers, because maybe they get to cast a broader net and get to explore more, which you can absolutely do. You don't have to like be stuck in your niche. You can do other things as well, but make sure you're able to present somewhat of a cohesive story to your target employers, because that's what I found really changed the game for me. That's what made me unsuccessful in the past of casting too broad of a net, of researching in aerodynamics and structures. And when I figured out how to change my resume around, I was definitely a more competitive applicant. So this is a glimpse of a portfolio website that I made very quickly, spring break 2019, that I've since updated. A few key things. It was important for me for it to be pink. It was important for me to have certain text choices, for me to present myself in a particular way. I've had peers who've had very successful portfolios that they've coded themselves to show that skill. Whatever it is, make sure you show up authentically. And you can link other things. So my blog is linked at the top there, and so is my resume. And I always have a more updated, targeted resume for every place that I apply to. So this is a very general resume. Okay, so after the basics are covered, I like to think of the basics as what I wish I would have done freshman year, right? I wish I would have known these things. I wish someone had told me, but they didn't, and it's okay. And I'm like telling my younger self right now. So in the thick of it, I kind of see this as like what you're doing junior, senior year of your undergraduate degree. But if you're graduate students, you just need to like kind of cram this information into a semester and make sure you know that you're doing this right. So the most important thing that people get stuck on is, where can I work? Because that information is so confusing, and I don't know if it's mystified for a reason, but a few key things that helped me understand that I could work here in the United States as an international student was fellowship pages. So particularly the Z Factor Fellowship and the Brooke Owens Fellowship that are only for undergraduate students have companies on there that list out like who will accept anyone and who won't. Next, master's international students who are in their second year probably have an internship somewhere. Maybe they're doing research with a national agency and they got hired at that national agency, for example, the FAA, through a contractor, or they're working at NASA through a contractor. And so master's international students in their second year are amazing resources, whereas I found that PhD students may be more focused only on their research and rely more on their professors for resources pertaining to academia. Then there are international students across SAEDS clubs across the state, across the United States, as well as WOA clubs. So you can essentially network with international students who are in different universities to learn what they know and get help. So for example, MIT graduate students recently hosted a virtual get to know each other session so that graduate students can network with each other. And one of the folks that shared that this event was happening was the Egyptian international student who has been looking for opportunities as well. Okay, then there's spacetalent.com that has lots of space companies that exist globally. So if there's a company that essentially has offices internationally, you can go to their page and find the people who work there, and then go to their LinkedIns to see if they went to a high school or bachelor's university that wasn't in the United States and now they work here. So you can essentially message them and say like, hey, I see you're from Spain. Are you still a foreign national? Would you mind talking to me about it? I would love to know about your experiences. I have an Instagram guide where I try to demystify this and networking. And so something really important that I want to highlight here is that at this stage, you want to ask yourself all the time, are all my resources reliable? And am I being misinformed or discouraged through projections? So what I mean by this is that there will be well-meaning people in your journey who often are in positions of power or work in certain workplaces where you can't work as an international student. And their perspective is that international students can't work here because of XYZ restrictions, which we're familiar with. But that's a projection. And if you hopefully attend these international speaker series, you know that there are people who work here. And so you can say politely, thank you, and kind of go about your day. I've known international students who've taken people's advice to heart, and it kind of messed them up on their journey. They maybe didn't apply to the things that they needed to in the right timeline, and they actually got sent home at the end of 2020 because they just didn't have their job in time, and that's really unfortunate. And so I feel really passionate about making sure that people aren't misinformed, and if they want to work here, they have an honest, decent shot, because this is a country where there are a lot of immigrants, and we all deserve honest, decent shots. Okay, so then you're networking to confirm and fact check your list. My Instagram guide that I made a couple years ago isn't updated, and so there are companies on there that don't hire international students anymore, and so you should fact check that. You should fact check everything I post, everything other people tell you, and you want to do this by, again, finding people on LinkedIn, people who actually work there, and multiple people at the same company to understand if hey, can I actually apply? Will you accept my application? And the key with writing to them is that you want a short message with your availability, your contact information, your website that you created in step 4, and you want to be grateful that they're giving you time, and you want to share how they inspire you. Because I get personally a lot of messages from folks who it can sometimes come off as either being rude or entitled, and I really want to help them, but I know that changing the tone would immediately make me respond. And so saying something like, your journey has really inspired me, I would love to chat, I would be so grateful for your time. I think that's really key language. And so something that you want to ask yourself is who is someone, this person, this foreign national who works at this company who's multiple years ahead of you, who is someone that they would want to respond to, and how would that person communicate? What would make them respond with enthusiasm? Like, what would make them want to mentor you, right? Because you're building a relationship and you don't want it to be transactional. You want it to be genuine, where like they're helping you, you're helping them. And so similarly, you're networking for a mentor in your niche. So for me, it was system safety. And you want to find master's and PhD mentors as well as industry mentors. And a really great way to do this is to apply for AIAA diversity scholarships, which are open to all sorts of folks, international folks as well. And you get matched with someone at Aurora Flight Sciences, which is open to international students. Alrighty, okay, so after you've made these mentors, you want to ask them for help. So you're getting help with your resume, your letters of recommendation, for awards, fellowships to make your application more competitive in the future. And then if you're an undergrad, you're asking them for letters of rec for graduate school. And if you have like challenging projects, I've definitely had mentors who've asked questions, like systems engineering questions for my projects as well. And here you want to keep in touch. You want to share the progress and congratulate them on their wins, and then also nominate them for things that you're looking at for them for. And the questions that you're asking are, how can I uplift others as they have helped and continue to help me? And I think this is a really key piece in making sure relationships are not transactional, that you like care about this mentor and you're rooting for them. So like if they work for a contractor for the FAA and they get a promotion or some other big thing in their life, like you're congratulating them, you're celebrating them, you're nominating them for things as well. And that way they like help you on your journey and you help them on theirs. Okay, so this is a list of places that I've compiled that again can be a shifting target, but I found that people who get their very first internship in the United States, usually in undergrad, get a co-op through Delta Airlines as an international student. They also are eligible for the Z Factor Fellowship for any and all genders, and for gender minorities for the Brooke Owens Fellowship, as well as Cummins. So at Cummins, they usually get mechanical engineering jobs, but it helps them on their journey for the next aerospace job. Then there are folks who get jobs through conferences, so particularly TWE, NSBE, SHEP, and Grace Hopper. And so folks that have been successful have worked at Collins Aerospace, JPL, Cummins, and Kitty Hawk. Then there's urban and advanced air mobility companies. So I'm not going to read them all out, but there's a lot of them, and they're all competing with one another. They all need similar skills. They need engineers, like they're hiring furiously. So if you have a competitive application, you can apply, and those skills are transferable. If you, for example, eventually want to work in the space industry, you can work at any of those places first, get really great experience in the aerospace industry, maybe fall in love with it, maybe stay or move on. All right, so then there's commercial space companies, and then there's particularly companies that cater to students interested in propulsion, because propulsion tends to have ITAR EAR restrictions. So Benchmark Space Systems and Morpheus are commercial space companies that take on international student applicants, as well as Tesla. That's a really great route if you want to focus on being a propulsion engineer. That's what you're passionate about. You can work there until your status changes, and then apply to other places that you're more passionate about. You can be a contractor at the FAA or NASA through KBR and USRA. You can go the PhD teaching route. So some of the folks who are passionate about that are research engineers at GE Research, or some folks at ASDL. If you're passionate about astrophysics, you can be at JPL or STSI, and International Student Speaker Series had a guest who is at STSI. And then finally, you can go the consulting, tech, policy, or SciComm path and get transferable skills to then work in aerospace. So I have all of this on a guide on Instagram. And again, this can change. And so fact check everything before you apply so that you don't get dejected when it doesn't work out. But there are definitely places and more than one. So chances are you could probably work at one of these places. And there are people that work here who are international. Okay, so a note on finding your mentors. So on LinkedIn, you're going to search for the companies that I just listed. And then you're going to go to people and then search your niche. And then you're going to find the people in your niche. And I personally have mentors across all the urban air mobility companies that exist in system safety. So chances are, I'll get a lot of system safety help. So for whatever niche you are passionate about, you can find your people who will help you. Someone has to say yes, right? If you're inspired by them and you're grateful for their time, someone has to help you. All right, so we're almost there, and you have all these tools now in your toolkit, and your resume's been reviewed. You have a website, you have all this advice, and you're like, okay, I think I can finally get a job. So you want to apply to relevant roles. Something I've heard from recruiters is that if you apply to every single job at Planet, because you can work there because it's a commercial space company, chances are the recruiters are going to see that you've applied to every single thing, and they're going to think which one are they actually qualified for, right? A lot of times on our end, we think that we're improving our chances by applying to everything everywhere, but what I've learned is that it's not perceived in the best way. So focus on your discipline and those parts of your niche. I listed so many different aspects of one discipline, and see if you can match it that way. And so for every sort of role, you're targeting your resumes and you're having conversations with recruiters before and during applications so that you can get your questions answered if they pop up. And again, you can find them through LinkedIn in the same way where you're going to every company and you're finding the recruiters. And if you get a fellowship through the Z Factor Fellowship or the Brooke Owens Fellowship, it can be a more elevated experience if it's in your niche. So I was a space consultant through my Brooke Owens Fellowship, but I wasn't a system safety engineer, so it took me a while to find my way back to safety. And so you could probably get there faster, again, if you focus on the area that you care about. And something that I want to urge y'all is to interview the places that you're going to be working in before, during, and after the experience, because no matter who you are, even if you're an international student, you deserve to be valued and respected at your place of work. And something that I felt during my undergraduate experience was that I was a second-tier candidate compared to my American peers. And that is absolutely not true at any of these places that will hire you willingly. And you want to ask yourself questions like, do I feel psychologically safe on my team if you receive this internship? How will I be compensated in the future? What are data points from my peers regarding compensation? And what is important for me to negotiate for? And I say this because a lot of international students don't bother negotiating because they think that, particularly in aerospace, because they think that either they can't or they have visa concerns in the future, and so they don't want to ask for anything else. They just want to be safe, but you can absolutely ask. And this leads me to finding your full-time in your niche. And so a great way is converting the fellowship or whatever internship you've already had to your full-time job, but you can also apply to any of these other companies with similar systems. So going back, there were certain buckets of companies, so you can apply to anything within that bucket. And for this, I want you to keep in mind your matrix of values and interview managers and teams before you apply with these values. So I'll go into that in a bit, but what you want to ask yourself is, what are my values? What values are important to me at work specifically? How will this manager or team support my goals and ambitions? And how will this role continue to allow me to pay it forward? Okay, so these are values that you could think about. So for someone, it could be innovation and security. And for someone else, it could be justice and integrity. And so these different companies and these different buckets may give you a different feel when you interview the managers and the teams. There may be, like, for me, diversity, equity, and inclusion was top on my list. And so my experiences talking to these folks and the answers that I got could have been very different to someone who valued something else, like how fast are we going, who's getting to market first. Like, those are two very different things. So you really want to ask yourself, like, what matters to you, because you're going to be doing this job for a while, particularly if you have like visa concerns. Like, you want to make sure you're choosing something that makes you happy. Okay, and then things that you can negotiate. So we know salary, but I want to highlight other things like your bonus, the title, like what your job specifically will say. So this is important because, for example, if you're a controls engineer in a urban air mobility company, but you want to pivot to doing like astrodynamics somewhere else. So like, you need to be careful about what sort of language you're using to make that pivot and think like a couple steps ahead, so you can negotiate like what it could be called and have a conversation with your manager and the recruiter about something like that. Other things like remote work, all the way to like commuter benefits if you move out there. Okay, so this is a summary of the journal prompts. I personally have taken this very seriously, and it's helped me find a place that I feel really excited about. And I hope that like everyone can feel that way, because it's not just about having a job, it's about a place that respects you, where you can show up fully, where like your diversity and your nationality is respected and celebrated. And so I really wish that for everyone. I hope you take these journal prompts seriously and work through them if you feel called to do so. I wanted to end with a couple quotes that I think were really important for me. So in those 3 months where I was unsure of where I was going between my undergraduate and graduate degree, I read something that said, like, start with believing that you are the hero. You can change that with whatever, like, you are the change, hero, heroine, non-binary person that you are waiting to see. Don't fall for where you are right now. It is not your destination. It is a season of preparation, particularly if you have a job that you're not too excited about and you want to pivot to something that makes you more excited. Like, it all is building up to something. And that could be true for the research experience that you're in as well. So believe that your breakthrough is coming. Like, really believe. Like, I had to believe in so many things when I didn't see them in real life, and that's the only way that they like showed up in real life, because I was like, that exists, and I'm going to believe that it will happen for me. And it did. So I just want to close by saying that it's been such a privilege to have founded this series with Kira, and you can find a link to the series on my Instagram as well. And you can find me on my social media and write to me. So as I start work the fall, I'll have lives with more leaders who've been helping me convert some of my conversations into a podcast so that's more accessible. Have an international student series, particularly on my page or as a podcast, so that, again, it's accessible, and because I won't be at Georgia Tech anymore, I can continue doing this over there, and just sharing my updates as I move, setting up things like my work goals, etc. And just a note on helping me help you. It would be really helpful and useful if I get messages like, I have this question, could you answer that for me through content? Because then I don't only get to help you, but I get to help other people who might have that same question as well. So yeah, I just wanted to open it up for any questions that y'all might have. That's all. Thank you for listening. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. So I like earlier in that semester, I knew that COVID was happening. So it happened in March, so everything shut down. But even as things shut down, I actually got more interviews, because by that time I figured out how to make my application competitive. I had a website. So it's like, oh, like all this is working. So I was getting these interviews, but then I got rejected from all of them at the final stages because they were like, we just can't pay for you. Like we can't have you. There's no role anymore. So that was like May-ish. And I told my mom like I don't want to go to graduate school. Like I really don't think I'll be successful there because my belief was like I've done poorly in school. Like I don't want to do school right now. She was like, please just apply. So I applied to graduate school, and I got in 2 days later. So it's like, and a part of me still wanted to work because I didn't want to go to school. Um, and so I was trying for those 3 months actually to apply to more jobs still until I was like, you just need to like believe that this is the path that's like set out for you. So that's what I mean by like believe your breakthrough is coming even if you think that you have something that you don't want. That could be like a job you don't want or research experience you don't want. And also, um, I was talking to like 6 people a day for 2 months, 2 to 3 months. And that's how I actually built this international students. So that's how I found all these people that you've heard from. And I sent that list to Kira and I said, like, let's do something because I almost got deported. So let's make sure that doesn't happen to people. And I think my biggest wish for like everyone is that they take like all of these people's like hopes and dreams seriously because these are the people that have like built America in the past. Okay, cool.
Doing great.
Thank you. Okay. Do any absolutely, yeah. So I was in like a situation where I realized that I had found myself in a community that didn't necessarily reflect how I felt inside. So I found myself in a situation where um, posting online or like the stuff I do now wasn't the norm. Um, and so um, I wasn't really posting then I think, and so instead I went like inwards and if there is chaos around you, as there was with COVID, you need to find like something to ground you where you're either sinking or swimming. And so doing like meditating every day, journaling every day, by just literally Googling like journal prompts, helped me not think because it was out of like a necessity. And what I realized was like as these habits translated into graduate school, um, I found that I was like almost doing better than some of my other peers who were really struggling with starting in a new school. One, because I'd already gone here, but two, because I had these practices that like were helping me focus in like 3 hour long lectures. And it was the meditation. And I was in a community that made me feel like meditating was weird or like journaling was weird, right? So I guess my message is like do what you need to do when you feel like you're gonna think. And it doesn't matter like who thinks what is weird because there will still be people who don't think it's weird and you will figure it out. And then you will find people like when I go back to like thinking about how I got invited to speak at these universities, I sometimes sit there and think like, oh well, these people don't think it's weird, right? So like there will always be a community that like celebrates you. I think it was like my belief that I had to like be in a certain group or that I could like it felt hard to like shift my community in undergrad as we sometimes get so like enmeshed. But yeah, like I had to get out of a situation that made me feel bad for being who I was. That answered your question. Do any of y'all have any other questions? Go ahead. What's your name?
My name is Kunal.
Hi, Kundana. Yeah, so I think it like goes back to like this, like that's what I mean by like what are your values? And I think that for every international student, it can be different. So a lot of folks that work at like certain government agencies don't make as much money as folks who work in tech, but they are so excited and passionate about the work that they do, and that is what success means for them. Whereas other people who have to pay off certain loans need to work in tech to be able to pay off those loans. And so success to them is like getting a really big signing bonus and yearly increases in their salary. And so I think that's a really great question for you to ask yourself using this chart, and ask yourself, like, why am I here? What makes me excited? Why am I doing this really hard thing? Like, it's really hard to be here. You can switch, you know? And for me, it's about making sure that planes don't disappear. It's about making sure that, like, when you get on this, like, urban air mobility vehicle, you feel safe. Like, I want to play a role in that. And when I close my eyes and think about, like, any other job I can do, I, like, literally don't want to do anything else, which is concerning sometimes, right? It's like I could have switched. So I think that, like, I deeply believe that that's a question that only you can answer. And for me, my 14-year-old self would think I'm very successful right now. But my 12-year-old self wanted to be an economist and go to the London School of Economics and work at L'Oreal. She does not think I'm successful right now. Like, what are you doing? Like, why did you do this? This was so hard. So it's like, what do you want, right? Like, yeah. I'm sorry, I like threw that question right back at you.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I might do.
I think it's like when you close your eyes and you literally like can't think of anything else, I think you will find that path because, again, like I said, like you could find a job in any of these like other sectors and get transferable skills to stay here long enough to make that a possibility. Lots of people went the PhD route in the generations before us when immigration was different. Um, and yeah, I think that's just like, again, just a question that you can answer. Like, that sounds like a really great goal to me. Does it sound like a great goal to you? And I can't answer that question. Yeah. Thanks for listening to me ramble for an hour. Feel free to grab some food. Oh, and I got stickers for people who are attending. So these are from all the different conferences that I've attended pre-COVID. So there are a lot of different cool spacey stickers. So feel free to grab one. Yeah, and I'll be here if you want to chat.